and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stuck in the Middle podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Uncle AK.
And I'm Reflex. Thank you for tuning in. How you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling good, man. How you feeling?
I'm great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yesterday we supported Ty and Hustle Hard Global's second annual basketball tournament. Definitely want to shout him out. Ty has been on the podcast, so, just wanted to shout him out off the top. It was a great turnout. Support them. They benefit Kenya, so, listen to that episode for more. And if you haven't caught up on us, SITM Podcast on all social media platforms. We would love to chat with you. If you prefer, email us sitmpodcast237@gmail.com. And our sponsor is Perfect Office Solution. They sponsor this podcast. They provide affordable, professional, and flexible office space for entrepreneurs in the DMV area. Starting at just $4.99. So if you use promo code SITM Podcast, you get 10% off that, Sweet deal. I like giving out free stuff, you know what I'm saying? It's not, every day that I feel generous. But, yeah, we have a special guest in the building today on Stuck in the Middle podcast.
Yes, sir. You want to do us honors?
Yeah, man. We have the pleasure of sitting with Inacent Saunders.
Yes, sir.
She is the founder of and principal consultant of GroundworkForChange, LLC, and she's also an author. Thank you for joining us for Stuck in the Middle podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, all the way from Brooklyn, New York.
Yes, sir. Brooklyn, New York.
See, we said
where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn
Don't
at?
start.
Where
Don't
Brooklyn
start.
we usually tell guests to show up 30 minutes early, and she was here. Bang! I was taking a nap.
I knew you were napping when I knocked on your door.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Thanks for getting me on my toes. But thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Who is like Inacent Saunders? Let's start right there.
Okay. Who is Inacent Saunders? Inacent is a daughter, a sister, a lover of God, a lover of the written word and the spoken word, passionate about nonprofits and community building and grassroots organizing, and just an all-around good woman, I think.
What would you say the theory of change is?
My personal theory of change?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Because that's a term we use in nonprofit management.
Yeah.
My personal
Jump
theory.
right in.
Go for it.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about from a life perspective, I think my personal theory of change would be steeped in one's faith system. Whatever that faith system might be, mine is Christian, but really having a foundation to stand on and build from, which coincidentally is the point of my business, Groundwork for Change. Not to shift gears, but that's what Groundwork for Change means. It's a foundation to build from, build your social change initiative from. So yeah, having a firm foundation to stand on and that you go back to when you're questioning, when you're unsure, when you need guidance. And continually allowing that to be the thing that leads you and guides you as you go through life, hopefully changing for the better along the way.
There is a career for everybody, being that we're 2018, Stuck in the Middle, we try to make people understand that you just don't have to stick to being a lawyer, doctor, engineer, or disgrace your family.
There's no limit.
There's no limit to
Right.
it. And, you help nonprofits, you manage nonprofits pretty much, right?
So can I tell you a little bit about my career?
Definitely.
Of course, definitely. I was
So-
actually leading there.
Awesome. So I started out in the nonprofit field when I was a teenager. My very first job after school, like the 11th grade, was for a nonprofit organization. And we did youth development work specifically around HIV and AIDS prevention, which is why I wear my pin today. Always want to bring awareness to the issue of HIV and AIDS. But in any event, it was such a rewarding experience. I decided at the age of 17, when I was about to leave that job, that I wanted to work in this sector forever. This was my career. And I'll never forget, I had a supervisor at the time who pulled me to the side and he said, Innocent, there's really no money in this field. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I think about nonprofit, I'm thinking about just the give, you know what I'm saying, for the employees or whatever. It's like you don't make the six figures that normal people are attracted to.
Right.
I don't know.
So that going back to your theory of change and kind of the reason you do things, being a goal-oriented person, you choose a career in the nonprofit sector, not just for the money, because you do want to be compensated for your skills. I think some people have this perception of nonprofit work being only volunteer driven and only about, the warm and fuzzies. But those who pursue it as a career, you do want to be compensated, particularly if you've gone the route of getting educated in whatever field that you're working in. But I say all that to say, the sector itself caught my heart at an early age. And so I'll skip past some of the in between years, but ultimately I worked my way up to a senior level position in the agency that I left in 2016. But during that time, my vision and my passion for the sector and the work just grew bigger and bigger. So it went from wanting to serve people in organizations to wanting to make sure organizations were doing the best work that they could do for the people, to now really wanting to have the biggest impact on the sector I could, which is why I shifted to consulting and started my own consultancy.
Groundwork
For
Change.
There you
What is
go.
it?
It's a nonprofit consulting business where, I call myself the CEO and principal consultant, but in reality, I'm the only consultant. And I have a network of folks I could tap into. But what I do is I provide strategic strategy development for particularly nonprofit starters. I love working with people who are just starting new initiatives, but also established organizations as well. So if you need business plan for your nonprofit, if you need a fundraising plan for I'm a planning specialist, a fundraising plan, a board recruitment plan. I also specialize in training along nonprofit management principles, but anything that's going to get you to the next level in your work. In serving people or serving communities, that's what Groundwork for Change does.
Real quick, because that might have flew over my head. Explain the difference between nonprofit management and nonprofit organization.
So when I say nonprofit management, I'm speaking to, so you've heard of the term business management. And a lot of people, when they think about nonprofits, they don't think of it as a business, but they are businesses. You have to register with your state. In order for you to become tax exempt, you have to register with the federal government, the IRS specifically. And they're organizations, they're businesses that need to be run as such, even though, like I said, I think sometimes when we think of nonprofit, we think of, volunteer work. You work with kids or you work with, animals, whatever it is, but they are living, breathing organizations just like a regular for-profit business, and they need management, sound financial management, executive leadership, any human resources. You have to hire and fire people. So long story short, when I say nonprofit management, I mean those business management principles that you apply to the nonprofit organization.
Before getting further, what kind of education do you need to, work in the nonprofit sector, or even having a nonprofit up doing that?
I hesitate to say what type of education you need. I can tell you the path I took. Like I said, I have a long history from the age of 15 to the age I am now, which we won't say, but I have over 20 years experience in the sector. So that I think helps tremendously if you are involved in the work. And I will say in terms of higher education, I didn't complete my bachelor's until 2015. And that's in general liberal arts. So that's not specific to nonprofit. But then my master's is specific to nonprofit. I finished my master's in nonprofit leadership in 2017. And that helped tremendously as well. But I say that to say, even without those credentials specifically, one who studies the sector, who goes to trainings. That's how I was able to work my way up to a senior leadership position, even without a degree at that time. So yeah, anyone who kind of dedicates themselves to really learning their craft, same as almost in any other industry. If you dedicate yourself to learning the craft, whether that mean trainings, webinars, conferences, and build the skill sets and be willing to take on new projects here and there. Because there are some people who say, I work with kids after school. I only do work in groups with young people. But if you take a chance and say, okay, I want to help with this fundraiser, or I want to help with this this marketing plan we're doing, you learn the sector, you learn the work.
It's something I read this weekend as I was doing my reading. There's a difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Growth mindset.
Yeah.
Another thing that I heard too, it just goes back to what she said, is you don't need experience per se. Just get started, and like you said, work into it.
Right.
Now, is Groundwork for Change itself a nonprofit?
It is not. And when I went to form it, I had to decide whether or not I wanted to make it a nonprofit organization or a for-profit. The main difference being, if I made it a nonprofit, I would likely get the most, I would get my money by applying for grants and raising funds to be able to serve the organizations I was going to be consulting. But when you form a nonprofit structure, there's also accountability to certain folks that I didn't necessarily need for the business that was going to be my bread and butter. there's still accountability to, systems and processes and the state and the, paying your taxes and all of that. But point being, it's an LLC. And I did that intentionally because I didn't need to be a nonprofit to serve other nonprofits.
Right. And what kind of services do you offer?
Back to my passion is really strategy development. So that's helping new nonprofit founders write their business plans, or established nonprofits doing strategic planning, fundraising, anything that you need a plan for, I can help with. That's where I get my most joy these days.
What's one thing that Groundworks for You has actually done recently? Like, what's an example of a service you provided recently?
So this is interesting. When you're your own business owner, or a freelancer in general, you have to kind of make some decisions about how you're going to pursue your income. I say all that to say the most recent thing that Inacent did in my consultancy was I actually ended up taking a part-time position for an organization that couldn't hire me as a consultant or hire GroundworkForChange as a consultant. But I still count that as in my portfolio of work. Long story short, it was an awesome experience for a large faith-based organization based in New York, where I got to create the curriculum for a social justice fellowship that they were expanding. It had been existing for some years in one iteration, but they were going to expand the program, allow more young adults to come from across the country to live in New York, work at a nonprofit, and learn about social justice issues. So it was an amazing experience because I got to write the curriculum for that, but also I got to set up the infrastructure for the programming. And unless you're into this stuff, that may not sound all that interesting, but like I said,
there's
I
a lot of
love
people who are
planning.
into this. We speak to a lot of nonprofit, like in entrepreneurs here.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely people who are definitely interested.
Good.
But I wanted to ask you, going into it, because you got to get fed. Are you the only one managing GroundworkForChange as far as like you have a team behind it?
So I do not currently have a team. When I first started, one of my business mentors worked with an organization that hooked me up with an intern. And I so greatly appreciated having that help. She handled, she had real work. She handled a lot of my marketing and my social media management and my general outreach. But when that program ended, that was the end of my team. And I never quite picked up another one. But it's interesting that you bring that up because as I've gone through this journey, that's one of the greatest lessons that is standing out to me. I refuse to do anything further without a team. And that's for my business, my ministry. I have like anything I do, even if it's a small team, because the stress and the work at the end of the day, having it all fall on yourself, it's not worth it. You'll break yourself down trying to do good work before you can even make a mark. So yeah, teams are important.
Teamwork.
Yeah. What's one thing going into nonprofit? Like, what's one thing I should know? Trying to start a nonprofit?
So the one thing I personally tell folks who come to me saying they want to start a nonprofit, when they say that, they usually come to me because they want help filing their incorporation paperwork. They want help applying for tax exempt status with the IRS. But for someone who's just starting the process of starting a nonprofit, I don't think those are the most principal matters. The principal thing for me, going back to my passion, is that you have a plan. Because what you'll end up with at the end of the day, all the paperwork goes through, your state says you have a nonprofit, the government says you have a nonprofit, and you don't have a plan to execute your work. So I know you recently had another guest, I saw a part of her podcast, and she was stressing the importance of business plans. Again, people don't think of that when you think of nonprofit work, but you need a plan with a theory of change to execute the good work you want to do. Otherwise, those communities that you say you care about and that you want to serve, you're not giving them the best of you because you haven't thought through this phenomenal vision that you have. So
that was Jamaica, by the way. And shout out to you, yo. Like you've been listening to a lot of episodes.
I had to listen here and there and see what
you're walking into.
Feel of the exactly. I'm glad you know.
I like it. But I'm thinking money. And forgive me for thinking about this, but okay. I'm asking questions like the listeners want to know. As far as managing nonprofit, how do you get fed? Just going back a little bit, 2 questions back. Are you limited to just Brooklyn, New York, or
no? Actually, so when I started consulting, I first started doing it pro bono. And I used a phenomenal online platform. I don't know if I can or should mention their name, but there was an online platform that allows nonprofit workers and other folks just skilled in, I guess, basic management to offer their consulting services for free to startup organizations. And so when you talk about, how do you get fed, I have gone through and continue to go through this kind of feast or famine thing that a lot of entrepreneurs will tell you about, where some days you've got clients calling you, or some months you've got all these projects in the pipeline, and then other times you're like, oh my God, where's my next payment coming from? Where's my next client? But going back, I'm sorry, I got lost a little bit. You asked about clients everywhere. My first few clients using that platform were from other states. And even now, one of the proposals I have out is to a client, prospective client in another state. So I'm not relegated to one area or one part of the country or world. And in terms of getting money, you do what you can. Like I said, I enjoy the part about helping people put their plans together, but I'll also do training. I'll also take a part-time job like I did this summer. This organization I told you about, I couldn't list it under GroundworkForChange, but it was me doing the work, getting paid consistently to do so. Yeah. So you kind of choose and be creative and look for opportunities to be able to make that dollar while still doing what it is you love to do.
This is clearly your passion.
It is.
How do you make it, what I'm saying, going back to the name Stuck in the Middle, how you make it through the rough patches, those times where it's like, man, my dollar ain't coming in as I put it out?
Yeah. Making it through the rough times, prayer, learning to ask for help. And again, just being transparent, I have not always known how to ask for help. And it's not because of some pride. I literally forget that I have people I can turn to, which is strange because they're always around me. I'm always around them. But bottom line, turning to who I call my tribe or my sister circle when I need some encouragement, some insight, anything, and even my family, my mom and my sister, my core family, they're super supportive of my entrepreneurial pursuits, even though they may not completely understand it. So yeah, tapping into my support system and my faith, like I said, prayer is how I make it through.
I like that.
Yeah.
What are some ways nonprofit organizations can protect, preserve, and position themselves for growth?
Protect, preserve, and position. I might need you to remind me of those in a moment. Protect, preserve, and position themselves for growth. Well, one thing is to constantly be scanning the environment. And I think that's true of any business. You start out with this mission, you're mission oriented. You want to help kids. And because of my background with working with young people, I'm always going to go back to you want to help kids. But you want to help kids, right? What's going on in youth services in the country, in the world where you are? Is there funding going into it? You think about, and everyone is familiar with this now, this whole push for STEM and STEAM education.
Oh, yeah.
That came from people scanning the environment and saying, well, this is a major issue for young people. This is what a lot of people are looking to fund.
Young
this
women.
is what people, right. So you look at your environment and be able and ready to, with proper planning, respond to shifts in the environment. And shifts in whatever part of the sector you're working in. So that's one way to position yourself. I think also, and we see this a lot in other businesses as well, be willing and able and bold enough to, in some way, position yourself as some type of authority on the topic you are speaking from. So whether that's, I'm gonna go back to kids again, but if that's animal rights or something, or voter rights, civic rights, whatever it is, don't just do the work. Put yourself out there, meaning, in the world and on social media and to the public eye as some type of authority on it. I'm not saying to make stuff up, but you should be doing work in such a way that you have some insight into the issue. You can't tell me that you're doing great work in after school and you don't have any success stories of your students, or you don't have any insight into what young people really need that you should be sharing with the world. I recently, even for my business, started doing that. One day, literally like a month ago, I'm like, I need to write some articles for LinkedIn. Yeah. And I wrote one article. I'm not going to say it reached hundreds of people, but it felt good.
Right.
And so I said, well, you need to do this for your business now. So then I wrote one specific to nonprofit management. And I plan to continue to do so. But you have to position yourself as an authority and be able and willing to respond to your environment.
Hey, make sure you write one for Stuck in the Middle too. You got a blog section on that website.
Oh, okay.
But I personally know a lot of nonprofits that crash, even not crash and burn, but stagnant.
Okay.
They get to a point. So just going back to that growth point, you know what I'm saying? As far as management is concerned, how can they, hit that? Get out of that stuck point and get out of, hit that threshold and grow.
Yeah. I really think that depends on what's keeping them at that threshold. So is it that you don't have enough funding to do more? You and your team might need to focus on some fundraising planning. You don't just arbitrarily write all these grant applications that look good or that other people are getting. You have to build relationships. You have to, find out where the money is. So it really depends on what the roadblock is to getting to that next level or to growing. And then you handle it from there. I think that's about as specific as I can get. Yeah.
Book a discovery call on your website. If I book a discovery call, what are we talking about? Like, talk us through that process.
Sure. So when folks can go to my website and book a discovery call, what they're essentially saying at that point is they've seen enough of what I say I can do on my site, or maybe they met me somewhere else in person or online, and they're ready to now talk about their dream, their vision. So the typical flow of the call is, general introductions. And then I ask folks to tell me about their mission. What is the work that they're trying to do or currently doing? And then based on that, I then dig a little bit deeper. Okay, now tell me what led you to reach out to me. What area of nonprofit management or nonprofit growth are you thinking about struggling with or need assistance in? And then from there, I probably would ask a few clarifying questions, and then we'll figure out whether or not I'm even the person to talk to. If you want grants written, I've done it, but that's not my passion. It's not my main stream of business. So I may have to say, I'm going to refer you to somebody. But if after our call, you're like, oh, I need to figure out how to form a board of directors, I'll then let the person know what I've done to help others. And even by the end of the call, many times I'll have enough details that I can submit a proposal to the person where they can see a bit more of my work and figure out, okay, I think I want to work with her. She says in 3 months, we'll have these things about my board of directors. We'll have a plan, blah, blah, blah. But that's that 30-minute call. I typically try and do all of that.
Yeah. Man, she's got 20 years of experience doing this, man. But switching gears a little bit. Hey, she loves it. The clear passion. Switching gears a little bit.
That's the excitement in you. Right
I'm ready to start a nonprofit. I don't know. You know what I mean? One of your proudest moments in life was when you launched this book right here,
yes.
2015.
Yeah, that's right.
From praise,
from pain
to praise.
Yes,
Pain
sir.
to praise.
The prose and poems of a daughter in the process. Speak
Yes.
about that.
So in 2015, what was happening? Again, I've spoken a little bit about my faith, but I really felt, well, first of all, I always knew I wanted to write a book. As a child, actually, I thought I was going to become a journalist or a writer. And if I'm not mistaken, my first major in college, I was an English major because I was gonna write. That didn't work out. But long story short, at this particular time in my life, it became really apparent to me that there were other young women who needed to hear from someone such as myself, who had gone through this process. You talk about theory of change, who had gone through this process of transformation. And was still going through it. That's what the term daughter in process actually means. A daughter of God, going through this process called life, where you come into your identity in Christ, which, goes on until you leave to meet him. But a lot of times young women and young men, particularly from urban contexts, they deal with a lot. There's so much that we take in. There's so much we're exposed to. There's so much we either decide to participate in or not to participate in that really have nothing to do with who God created us to be. So having at that point about 7 or 8 years being saved and seeing God move in my life in such a way that, you know, I stopped doing a lot of the things and stopped being attracted to a lot of the things I used to be. I wanted to, and had written about it. I had written all this poetry and journal entries. I wanted to document it in some way as an encouragement to other young adult women to say, you know, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that. You know, you might be promiscuous, you might be using drugs, you might be using alcohol. Your life doesn't have to be that way. God still loves you. I'm an example of what that transformation could look like. And here's a result of it.
Yeah, documented.
Congrats on the release. You know,
Thank
the self-published book. What has been the feedback so far since you published this book?
I can't tell you, particularly from the young women who have read it that I know. I've had more lunch dates after the publication of this book than ever before. Like, people want to sit, they want to talk about it. You went through that? I can't believe that, Innocent. You know, I can't believe that, Sister Innocent. Well, yeah, believe it. And I'm sitting in front of you as proof that you can come through it. I think the biggest reaction that I got that I was pleased with was from my family, who some had seen looking in some of the issues I was dealing with. You know, like I said, I had previously been what you would call a functional alcoholic. I was the party girl Thursday through Sunday. I knew where to go for a good time, right? But seeing how supportive they were, that I put, you know, like intimate details like this out there, I knew that they had been happy that I had come through it, but to, like, you know, have people applaud you for being honest about your promiscuity, or applaud you for being honest about those things in your life. It was really refreshing. Really, one of the best days of my life was the day of the book release, because to have, you know, people from my community.
Like an open release out in the open, sunny day.
Sunny, it was hot.
Yeah.
It was hot. It
In
was
Brooklyn?
August 22nd in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
At an art space, a community art space. Who used a vacant lot to allow local vendors and artisans to put their stuff out. Yeah, so I'll give them a shout out. That's Arts East New York. They were running a vacant lots project where they transformed a vacant lot in the community into this place, like I said, where entrepreneurs, artisans could come and sell their wares. And I did it in their outdoor space under the baking sun. A friend of mine later told me that she was riding by on the local train and could hear me over the microphone reading some of the excerpts. But that was an awesome day because, you know, like I said, all my loved ones, friends from all over, from years ago that didn't even know about that part of my life showed up. And it was really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, this book is deep, man.
Yeah, this man.
Like, I would
you know
not,
what's crazy?
I
just remember the story.
I would not write this.
Shout out to Ma, by the way. Ma is great part of the podcast. He sat us down because we have a lot of meetings. One day in one of our meetings, he read a whole chapter.
Oh Lord!
You remember? I was like, bro,
I
bro, you gonna start reading?
Hold on.
Like, what is this? A class? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was. I'm sorry.
He just kept reading it. It was good stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, when you trying to give somebody an excerpt, you don't read a whole chapter. You know what I'm saying?
He gave you the whole thing.
Yeah, it was good.
I mean, the practical short chapters. You know, they're not as lengthy as.
I was like, man, you
know,
want me to just
Harry
slide in the
Potter
bed and you
something?
tuck me in at that point?
And each chapter is, you know, like you said,
This guy.
some of the chapters are like 2 or 3 pages. Some are 10 or 20 pages. But they were literally poems. I didn't write the book straight through like chapter 1, chapter 2. I prayed about which of my collection of heartache and whatnot, and my collection of poems and the good stuff too, which ones to present. And then I just kind of organized them in a way. So yeah, some of the chapters are like 3 pages because they're poems. Yeah.
You spoke about going to therapy in this book. How did that impact your life?
Changed it for the better. And I'm glad you asked about that. We know that mental health is such a major issue in life in general, and I'm glad to see it getting some exposure in the world now. But when I the first time I went to therapy, it was because I was dealing with anxiety and depression. A little further than anxiety, I had been diagnosed with something called panic disorder. So whereas somebody who has an anxiety attack, it's general. I won't call it general because I don't want to minimize it. But it's usually because something traumatic or scary is happening, and Your anxiety builds to the point where you feel your chest getting tight, your vision gets a little blurry, so you go through this anxiety attack. I had progressed to panic disorder, where it could be a cool wind that blew across my face would trigger the heart rate and all my body systems and my mind to think something's happening.
Wow.
Go into panic mode. And I was in the emergency room like at least once a day for that summer. It was like 2002. I think the summer of 2002. So in any event, I was having a panic attack every day. Literally I had to those doctor's bills in that part of my life almost stopped me from getting my first apartment. But I say all that to say it wasn't until going back and forth to emergency rooms, and one day I got taken into a psych ER, quite frankly, and I had a team there that finally said, you're not crazy. This is anxiety and panic. And they set me up with this is after months of showing up in people's emergency rooms. They set me up with a therapist. They set me up with a psychiatrist. They started me on a medication regimen. I know people are like anti-medication, but sometimes you need it. And it was an awesome experience. The therapist taught me how to talk myself out of those. Like if the wind blows moments, you don't send yourself into a panic. Stuff, yeah, it was rough. And it doesn't have to get to that point. Like you asked, how did therapy help? I wish I'd gotten it sooner. Thank God I got it when I did, but it didn't have to get to that point. So yeah, it was phenomenal. It was called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, that she helped me to think differently about what I was experiencing. It was great. And like I said, the psychiatrist, I went all the way up to the highest dosage and then was weaned all the way down off and really got a hold of the whole anxiety and panic and depression I was dealing with.
Man,
where can people find this book?
So this book right here is available on Amazon.com. You can search for From Pain to Praise. A few things will come up, but you can't miss this book cover. Or you can even just search for my name on Amazon. There's no other Inacent Saunders that I know of.
Yeah, that's a unique name.
Yeah. And I also have a website that I sell the book from, InacentSaunders.com. But Amazon is the best place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back to nonprofit, what would you say to someone who said a nonprofit career is a fallback option?
That's what I would say. That look I just gave. A fallback option. You know what's interesting?
Who wrote that? That's a dope question.
People in the nonprofit sector, oftentimes, not all the times, consider for-profit work as fallback. We know we're skilled in, let's say, program management, but my passion is to do it for a nonprofit. If I'm having a hard time finding a nonprofit job, I can go be a manager in the for-profit sector. So to think of nonprofit work as a fallback, I mean, to each his own, maybe that's that person's fallback, but it is absolutely a career worth pursuing, just like anything else a person is passionate about or wants to study, etc.
Personally, how do you prevent burnout?
I think I'm still figuring that out. Like I said, I've been learning. It's a process, right? I've been learning to ask for help. I've learned this lesson about needing a team, and I have experienced burnout. How do I prevent it? I think it's gonna all rely on my ability to really tap into what I just mentioned to you, my team. As a matter of fact, when I started to form the business, a close group of friends and myself, we had a group chat. And, once in a while we would go on. I started using that group chat. Like I was the one that drove the conversation. Like I need to talk. Who can talk right now? Or I need y'all to look over my resume, or I need y'all to look at my website. How does it show up on your phone? So again, tapping into that community was important for me in terms of trying to avoid burnout. But other than that, it really is going to rely on even self-awareness, like realizing when you hit that point. Like you said, I came from Brooklyn and I spent the night with some in a cousin's home this weekend while I was preparing for the podcast. And I said to them, I don't know why I'm so tired. And I'm like, well, you're about to move. I'm about to make a major move, y'all. You're about to move. You're planning to move. I have a sister who just had surgery this past week. It's been a stressful week. So having people around you to say, well, you're tired because, or you're stressed because, is great and necessary also.
What do you do on spare time?
I like going to the movies.
Where Brooklyn at?
You know, I'm a bit of a homebody, quite frankly.
Nothing wrong
So
with that.
my go-to is usually just hanging out with loved ones, family, friends, whomever. But I don't have a list of things that I like. That's not true. I like to go roller skating. I like to go ice skating. Like I said, movies. But I'd be perfectly content sitting at home, quite frankly.
What is success to you?
Success is, I'd want to say recognizing you are in a different place than you were before, that you have made some type of progress. Success is also being able to learn the lessons from what other people perceive to be failures.
Ooh. Nugget.
Yeah, I know I've seen that memed somewhere, something like that. But the point is,
I like your honesty.
No, it wasn't memed in that exact same way. But my take on it is, no matter what you go through, you know, getting the degree is not necessarily success.
Yeah.
Success was going back to school after dropping out 3 or 4 times. Right? Your perseverance, I think, speaks to your success. Yeah.
How can people connect with Groundwork for Change? You already plugged the book. Just get in contact with you.
Yeah. So they can check out my website, GroundworkForChange.com. And that's all words, not the number 4, GroundworkForChange.com. I'm also on Instagram, Groundwork for Change, at Groundwork for Change. And then I've been meeting a lot of awesome people on LinkedIn. So they can always follow me on LinkedIn, Inacent Saunders. I use my real name, of course. But yeah, those are the best ways for folks to connect with me.
I gotta learn LinkedIn, man. It seems like,
Oh, LinkedIn for the business world.
that's where the money at.
LinkedIn became my favorite social media tool at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was mine for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can dig it, yeah.
Yeah.
I still get news from there. So
Once I passed that free, 1 month trial,
for LinkedIn.
yeah, for LinkedIn, it got a little tricky.
Yeah, I didn't
want to pay
use
that.
that.
Oh, that's
money.
premium. You try
Yeah.
The premium thing. Yeah, I got
Just
to,
scale back to the standard.
got to email a lot of people with that.
Oh, okay.
But why we plugging in LinkedIn, man?
Yeah. Let's Innocent Saunders, we had the pleasure of speaking with you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
really
having me.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been great.
This has been great.
Pick
I
up the
thank you
book,
guys.
yo.
Yeah, man. AK is
Book,
gonna
man.
read you a chapter.
Nah, I'm not reading no chapter for nobody, man. Read your own chapter.
Now, listen, thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
We learned a lot about Groundwork for Change. Definitely hit her up. Get that call for discovery. Discovery call. Call for discovery. Yeah,
Discovery call.
And get your nonprofit, off the ground and flying.
Yeah, the world
Yeah.
is waiting for you. If you want to start a nonprofit, even if it's not with my help, get serious about it.
The world is waiting for you.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Hey, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on all social media platforms. We are SITM Podcast and AK, man.
Yes, sir.
Hey, we are out.
We are out.